Hey, Gene.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The board meeting of the Park District of Highland Park is hereby called to order at 6:05 p.m. on Tuesday, February 23rd, 2016, here at West Ridge Center. Could we please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein?
Here.
Commissioner Flores-Weiskopf?
Here.
Commissioner Kaplan?
Is he here?
Still here.
Vice President Ruttenberg?
Here.
President Myers?
And I am here as well. Good to see everyone again. Good to see you all again. And again, that odd sense of deja vu. Any requests from any of the commissioners for additional items to the agenda today? Or request of any items stricken? Okay. So, on the outside chance that people are here to talk about boating, we can move the public comment section up now. And I will also then move up our section talking about our Park Avenue update. I recognize most of you from this process throughout. I know many of you were at the City Council meeting last night. Good to see a show of hands. How many of you all were at City Council last night? Okay, almost everybody. I had an opportunity to watch the proceedings on television. You all look fabulous. I believe most of the other council members, park board commissioners, had an opportunity to watch it as well. So we certainly heard everything you all said yesterday. So to the extent that you feel compelled to repeat that, certainly is your prerogative. We'll provide the forum, but understand that we are listening, we are watching, we are paying attention. So I would encourage you to keep to the extent it's going to repeat what you said yesterday, if you could keep your comments brief, we would appreciate it. But we will nonetheless listen. By way of an update, I don't have very much to add to what Councilman Bloomberg told you all yesterday. He and I, as he mentioned, have been in very close contact on this topic. We have been meeting with members of the boating community. We have been in contact by phone and are continuing to try to work together to see if we can identify and evaluate a safe solution for two-way traffic on the East Road that would provide for trailered boat access. Those conversations are continuing. We have a meeting with the informal working group on March 1st. We remain in conversation. I have no specific details to discuss with anyone this evening, but to let you know that, as Tony mentioned yesterday, the process is ongoing and ongoing in good faith. I want to reiterate that, again, the sole issue before the Park District, before the City Council, and affecting you all, is whether and to what extent we will be able to allow boat trailers on the East Road. I understand the signs and the stickers that say save access to Park Avenue Beach. I just want to find out if there's anyone here who thinks we're talking about anything other than trailered boat access. If there is still a belief somewhere in this room that we are planning to make any other restrictions in terms of access to the East Road, because I think that it is important to make sure we all understand the conversation we are having and the conversation that we're not. You think we're talking about something else besides trailer boat access? Okay, you want to tell me what your understanding is? I just want to see if we can address it.
Sure. My understanding is that the access by other boaters is going to be so restrictive that it will not necessarily allow access for all boaters.
Okay.
Based on the rules of only allowing 4 at a time, removing parking, restricting parking, it will deter boaters.
Well, there's a difference between access and deterrence. What I would say is this. The issue that the city and the Park District are struggling with is how to make sure that the East Road remains open for trailered vehicles. The solution to that may entail some other restrictions in terms of time, place, and manner of access to the East Road. It doesn't mean people wouldn't be allowed down there. It doesn't mean people wouldn't be allowed to park. It doesn't mean people wouldn't be allowed to walk. What it means is there will be changes, if we do this to the way it is done now, potentially, that may have an impact on when you can walk, how many people can walk at one time, what time you can walk, what time you can bring boat trailers, et cetera, et cetera. But there is certainly no desire to restrict or prevent anyone from accessing the East Road to get down to the boat launch. So we're trying to balance all of those competing interests in a way that is safe for all of those users, as well as for pedestrians and the other users down by the boat launch. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't. No. I hate to say this, and I don't mean to be
We're gonna need the
disrespectful
mic.
in any way, but it sounds total double talk.
This is a waterfront.
Excuse me, I haven't called on you. Thank you.
By
Yes,
that,
ma'am.
By that, I
Turn the
mean,
mic.
you say that we're not even deterred. Sorry. By that statement, and I truly don't mean any disrespect.
No, I
It's a
think this is
matter
an
of
important conversation so we can all understand what we're
understanding.
talking about.
It's a matter of understanding. When I say voters will be deterred, what I mean, and you say we can't use it during certain times, and we may not be able to go this way or that way, we are being restricted to the point where we're discouraging access to Park Avenue Beach for everyone. Kayakers, fishermen, boaters, trailers, everyone.
Well, first, there have been no decisions made about what the restrictions are going to look like. So this is a conversation that we're having, and as Tony mentioned yesterday, you're getting into a level of detail that is subject to discussion. But I think we all need to understand what we are talking about. Does everyone get that with the West Road closed, there will be more congestion and traffic over on the East Road that we're going to have to manage? Does anybody disagree with that concept? Let's start with that. Okay, so we've all agreed. You disagree. All right, I will let you.
No, I'm not disagreeing. I wanted to ask a question. Maybe I don't understand something.
Okay, let me get through this, and then I'm more than happy to let you talk. Just let me get through this. So, with the West Road closed, we now have more traffic and more pedestrians over on the East Road. So what the city and the Park District are trying to figure out is how do we manage more people and more vehicles in the same space, or actually smaller space if you eliminate the West Road. So do we understand the constraints that we're dealing with? So everybody gets the problem, right? Same number of vehicles in a smaller space. There are a variety of solutions to that problem. They are not all good solutions, but there are a variety of them. What we are trying to figure out is to choose among the various solutions that we have been presented with. We've heard some very good ones. We've heard some less good ones. One that tries to balance all of those competing interests between the boaters, the sailors, the power boaters, the walkers, the people that like to drive around in a loop. But any solution that we come up with is necessarily going to be different from the situation that we have today. It is not going to be the same that we have now. So where we are in this process is trying to figure out if there is a solution that can safely allow the greatest number of people in all of those groups to still access the beach in a manner that is least disruptive as possible. And to get there, one of the ways that the city and the Park District have been thinking about this is to really focus on our respective expertise in different areas. The city, I think, has been very cooperative in helping to analyze what I would call the traffic and parking situation. How can we safely get all of these different user groups down from the top to the boat ramp? The Park District has a different expertise. Whereas the city focuses on public safety and traffic and parking, we are the boating people. So our expertise is getting the boats in and out of the water and trying to figure out how to manage boating operations and the yachting. So where we are and where this conversation has been going is for us to run the boating operations and for the city to manage the traffic and the parking and all the other non-boating activities down there, what does that look like? What constraints do we need to put on either of these two operations in order to make sure this can all be done safely? So that is the challenge for all of us, and that is what I know Tony has been spending a tremendous amount of time on. I've been spending a tremendous amount of time on. We all have to try and figure out how to get that balance right. And I suspect that whatever balance we strike, not everyone will agree with the balance that we have come up with. That is the nature of the beast, unfortunately. But our objective is to try and maximize public access given these constraints that we all acknowledge exist. But I think it is important to understand that we are not sitting here, nor is City Council, trying to figure out how few people can we let access Park Avenue Beach. To the contrary, we're trying to figure out how many people we can get to the beach as safely as possible. Anybody else did you have another question on that?
I'm so pissed, and I think the whole thing is so ridiculous to begin with. We are a lakefront community, and we we are stifling the lakefront. There's no reason to the reasoning to close the West Road, as far as I'm understanding, and maybe you can correct me, is security for a water plant. Well, in 50 years, there has not been a water plant anywhere in the United States that's been targeted. Why is Highland Park suddenly worried? Question one. And so we're now closing the West Road I'm a voter. And so the way it's always worked before, and forgive me for taking up time because I want to make sure I understand.
No, please, this is why we're having this conversation. Go ahead.
Is the way the roads work, we come down the West Road, go up the east. There's not multi-traffic. So it means either widening something or changing the configuration. The way it works and the security, all the people, all the voters, all of us down there are added security. We're always checking who's down there. We're looking to see who's walking around. We're protecting. The limitations are kind of working to the negative instead of the positive. So I'm still saying, why are we closing that West Road? But I understand now that is off the table and it's being closed.
So
Is that correct or not?
I'm going to let Councilman Bloomberg address the West Road issue.
Excuse me, Scott, can we ask people to identify themselves? We don't
Sure.
have all the people's names.
I'm Tony Bloomberg. I'm with the City Council. I'm the liaison to the Park District from the City Council. I appreciate your concerns. They've been raised at many of these meetings and at the City Council as well. I suspect you've seen some of those meetings. I volunteered to try to facilitate exactly what we're here to talk about this evening, to make sure that we can do all the activities at Park Avenue Beach that have continued to go on. You are correct that the West Road is not going to be incorporated in that plan. As has been explained before, there are security and safety issues that exist with the reconfiguration of the water plant, the particulars of which have not and will not be discussed publicly. I understand that's frustrating. I can't help that. It's frustrating that I can't tell you what it is. I will repeat what I said last time I was here. There's nobody on the City Council, nobody on the Park District that has any desire to limit anybody in Highland Park from their access to do anything and everything in Highland Park unless we felt there was a damn good reason to do it. I know that I have to stand here and hear those kinds of comments, and I understood that when I knew I was going to have to make that decision. It's a decision that I'm so certain was correct that I'm willing to do that. Putting that aside, I want to again agree with President Myers. There is going to be an effort made to have all the operations that previously existed at Park Avenue Beach and all of the different kinds of access that have been available in the past at Park Avenue Beach, including power boating, using the launch ramp, as well as all of the other kinds of boating, fishing, casual observation of the lake, walking around. We've addressed most of it. There have been a lot of ideas kicked around that impact and affect different activities. None of those activities will be eliminated, and the goal is to try not to eliminate or reduce any of those activities. I feel we are getting quite close to that. It is going to be a change, and with every kind of change, no matter whether it's the addition of a new housing project in Highland Park or this change at the waterfront, it's hard to accommodate, and I understand that, but our goal is to make that change in a way that allows all of the uses as they have existed to continue to be used at Park Avenue Beach. And I think your expectations are reasonable. There was a discussion of reducing parking at peak periods. Peak periods are pretty narrow periods of time. If we don't have to do that, we're not going to do that. And in fact, we may not have to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Why don't we state our names? Let's just get in the habit of doing that. I should have asked before. So you want to, right? You want to just use the microphone and sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we came in, everybody signed in.
Yeah, I'll let people speak. I just wanted to have a little Q&A here, and then we'll let people. No, it's fine. I think, and the reason I want to do this, I just want to make sure we are all having the same conversation. If somebody thought that we were trying to do something different or trying to solve a different problem, this does not become a constructive dialogue. So this is why I wanted to focus out of the box on this notion of saving access to Park Avenue Beach. Go ahead.
My name is David Shaneman. I'm a resident here, and I'm a boater. And I've listened to you this evening as well as at previous meetings, and it seems to me that the most important thing that has been repeated again and again and again is there are security issues. And that seems to be behind the changes that are being tossed about right now. It's kind of interesting. On the one hand, you tell us there are all these security issues, and the gentleman who was just up here says, but he's not at liberty to tell us what the security issue. It sounds like the government in Washington, they're telling us, well, there are all these issues, but they can't tell us what these issues are. Government is here to really help us and protect us. They're our friends. I know you've got a difficult job. You're sitting up here and you're trying to balance everybody's likes and dislikes and what we should and shouldn't do. Tough job. On the other hand, I think maybe if either you or the gentleman who just spoke were a little bit more open and told us what kind of security issues there are that you are so concerned about that after all these years, as far as I know, you haven't had any breaches of security. What is it that we are so concerned about that has the community in such an uproar that we have to change and reconfigure the physical location of everything down there? We're down there, as a boater, we are down there early in the morning before any of you people are out of bed, and many of us are down there late at night. We're down there taking care of our boats, but we're also down there looking to see, hey, what's going on? If there's a problem, we pick up our cell phone and we'll call the police. But, you know, everybody talks about, well, security, security. That's a great word to cover up a lot of stuff. I haven't heard anybody say what it is. What is it that we are so afraid of in this community down there? And until that happens, you're putting us all on edge by saying, well, in the name of security, we're making these changes. But you're not going to tell us what the security issues are. So,
Okay, thank you. So, any other questions or comments from the board before we open it for public comment?
Let's say what you said. Scott?
Yeah, please.
Just want to address what the last gentleman said. I mean, I don't want to. I know that a lot of the people in this room feel like the Park District and the city are pointing fingers at each other, and you're not getting straight answers. And I appreciate that sentiment. But you came up here tonight and you say, tell us what the security reasons are why you want to close the road. We're not privy to that information. The West Road is and the roads, as it's clearly been delineated, is that the roads are and the property is owned by the city. The city made that decision, and that was where all these discussions started. We don't have that information, so even if we had it, we don't even have it to give to you. And you know, listen, I respect where the city's come from. You know, we elected our city councilman and to look out for the best of our community and our mayor, and you know, we have to put our trust in them that they have the information, and that's the reason why they're not doing this. They're not here to pick a fight. There has to be something legitimate behind that. We don't have that information to give to you, but that's what I say. I mean, sometimes you have to trust people, and they made that decision, and that's what we're trying to work backwards from that decision.
Excuse me, I have no problem, and I did not mean to infer any of you individuals or the committee are holding back on us. I didn't mean to say that. I just meant to say that whoever has this information, instead of coming forth and telling the community about it, we're left in the dark. And when you're left in the dark and you don't know, you just draw conclusions, some of which are obviously not correct. But I didn't mean to infer that you people are holding back. So if I gave you that impression, please forgive me, I did not mean to.
And thank you for that. I think we understand that this is a very emotional issue for everyone. Let me put it in a slightly different context. For purposes of today, we need to come up with a solution that does not include the West Road. And to paraphrase what Councilman Bloomberg just said, I know how frustrating that is. It is frustrating for you all. It is frustrating for us. It is frustrating for Councilman Bloomberg. It is frustrating for the City Council. But I want you to think about something that he said, which is, do you think that the City Council would have any desire to expose themselves to this kind of political heat and turmoil if they did not truly believe that what they were doing was in the best interest of the community? It gives me... Okay. So what I will say to you is this. I respect your opinions on that, and you are entitled to them. I have a different opinion on that, and that's fine. And for purposes today, it really doesn't matter what your opinion is, because even if that were the case, the West Road is not a conversation that we can have tonight towards any useful end. We can't open it. City Council isn't going to open it. So if we want to talk today about constructive solutions to the problem, what I would ask is whatever frustrations you have about the West Road, obviously you'll have the podium, you're welcome to share them. It is not going to get us to where we want to be as far as what the city and the Park District are trying to work towards. If the West Road winds up opening at some point later, then it's a different conversation. But for now, we are not dealing with that topic, okay? So let us try and be constructive with the time that we have here and deal with the situation that we have, as opposed to wishing that it were different from what it is, okay? All right.
Scott, excuse me. I think for those who may not have been in attendance at all of the Park Avenue Task Force meetings, and I see there's some new faces here, this issue about what is the security concern was raised 18 months ago. And part of the dilemma everybody has had, and they've all raised the same questions, what is the security concern? And I think Councilman Bloomberg has stated innumerable times, it is a matter that is known to the city. We as the Park District, and I think as Scott said, we can only accept that. We're not going to get into a distinction with the city as to who is in charge of security at the water plant. That's their responsibility. And as Scott said, our president said, we're trying to work a solution. The West Road's closed. There's a security concern, whatever it is. And that's the focus of Tony's, Councilman Bloomberg's ad hoc task force, our task force, the boards, the president's meetings. So that's what we're trying to get to. And I think the fact is this was an ongoing question that the task force kept asking, and it's just not on the table. It's not on the agenda.
Okay. Anything else from the commissioners? Councilman, anything else you want to add before we comments? Okay, why don't we call our speakers?
Mike Strohs.
Good afternoon, or good evening, President Myers, member of the board, staff, friends of Park Avenue Beach, fellow citizens. My name is Mike Strohs, and I live at 580 Hillside Drive in Highland Park. We're here tonight, the Friends of the Park Avenue Beach, to show our continuing concern, Barney, you put it well, 18 months, over the impasse to access at Park Avenue Beach. And we understand that there may be substantial or substantive discussions that are ongoing, and we're pleased, as Julie said last night, keep up the good work of trying to get things resolved. And we're going to spare you a presentation tonight. There's going to be three of us speaking very briefly and hitting a few salient points, and we'll move right on. I'm going first, and I want to make sure that Liz already spoke to it, but I want to make sure that we state our unanimous rejection of the breadth and the depth of the operational restrictions as were presented in our working group on February 20th and detailed in a separate email to me by Liza.
Michael, let me stop you for a second. Are those the restrictions that when we were meeting with Councilman Bloomberg, we went around the table and I asked everybody if they were okay with this and they all said yes?
Yes.
Those are the restrictions that you now don't like?
Well, I personally said that I was okay with some of them. But
actually, what you said is you thought it was a great plan.
I think it's a great plan, but if my group says we are opposing the restrictions to the extent that they are, then I have to go with the will of the group. It's just not me.
You're not speaking for yourself, you're speaking for your group right now?
I'm speaking for the group that meets on Saturdays, the Friends of Park
But
Avenue
you
Beach.
personally disagree with them?
I personally think that there is wiggle room on both sides, but to the extent that the restrictions have been presented, it's unacceptable. And that's what I'm saying tonight. And that's what the group is saying tonight, and that's what Liz was saying previously, and she's a member of the group too. I do not necessarily think that we can't all suffer a bit of pain, but some of the restrictions that have been proposed, such as limiting the number of parking passes sold to the yacht club, no more daily launches at all, a curtailing of the amount of launches to 4 an hour, which is perfectly okay. That's my idea, as a matter of fact. But stopping it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon is not okay. We originally said there are 2 parts to the ramp. A boat can go down, a boat can come in. We had no problems with doing tea times throughout the day. But I didn't say it, but
Oh, yeah, you did.
I was thinking it, but I didn't say it.
We
so,
all heard it.
Every time I do that, I have to throw $1 into the fund that buys more stickers. So maybe you don't want me to go there. I think that the plans are workable, but I think they're too draconian, and that's what the group is saying. They're just too draconian. We understand that everybody's going to feel some pain. We understand that the loopers may have to go to the north side. We understand that the boat storage may be at a different facility. We understand that there may be less parking at the yacht club. But to just restrict, to minimize the traffic, which is what we did here. We did here in that meeting, and that's what the notes indicate. And we're raising fees, not necessarily, or perhaps in addition to covering extra cost, to just physically constrict the amount of traffic out of a concern, which we share, that safety might be an issue there. But since the substantial discussions that we hear are going on might include having members of the city's safety department down there directing traffic, kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off of you all and the staff and the people that are hired. If there's a cop down there telling me I can't drive over here, I'm probably going to listen to him and obey him more than if there's a teenage child telling me the same thing. I would hope I would listen to that teenage child, but I know that a person in a uniform is going to command a little bit more respect. So our issue is not with a little bit of pain. Our issue is with so much pain that launches might be curtailed or cease after 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's a nice evening and we want to go out for a boat launch, but we're not going to be able to, even though there's nobody in the launch ramp, but there's 15 boats out in the lake, and so consequently we're not going to allow that person to go out in the evening because there could be 15 people coming in right then and there, and that's our problem. Sorry, I had a prepared statement. We certainly understand that the environment's going to change, and the group is accepting that there will be two-way traffic eventually. We know that the West Road is closed. We've got it. Can't say we're particularly happy about it, but we certainly understand that. But we know that everyone's going to have to share some pain. But since the mayor has indicated that she would be investing in road infrastructure, improvements, widening the entire North Road, the Sogan plan, improving the 3 turning radii. I love the word radii. I haven't used it nearly enough. And other repaving and restriping is necessary. We think that perhaps your abundance of concern over safety can be just dialed back a little bit. If we all feel a little bit of pain, you know, there's one boater that isn't going to be happy about going where there's grass because her tires might be affected, but they're willing to do that kind of stuff in order to continue to have full access for everyone throughout the day, with the limitations that you can't put too much into that smaller space, but let's not stop it just over an abundance of caution. And that's where I'll stop.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to just ask if Brett could get up next. He has a couple of comments to make. We kind of have a little bit of a presence here. I think I signed him up.
Brett Toplan.
All right. Mike, thank you for that. And, Brett Tolpin, 283 Leslie Lane. I'm a power boater. I'm a member of the Yacht Club. Thanks for hearing me today. I'm also kind of a fresh set of eyes. I've started attending the Saturday meetings after being involved in a sort of political Highland Park land battle of my own, and that's now mostly resolved. Happy to be here today addressing you. I'm an IP lawyer. That's an intellectual property lawyer, and we think in terms of control, use, and ownership. And at the Saturday meeting, we had a surprise visit from Mayor Roddering, and it was great. It's like, hey, you want to come over? Come on over, talk to us. And she said something that sounded pretty good to me, and then I was a little surprised. What she said is, she said, well, the city owns the land at Park Avenue, and I'm committed to access for all. City will finance, whatever it takes to keep access going, and hopefully the Park District will go along, but if they don't, maybe we can get a third party, or maybe the Yacht Club could, take over. And I thought, okay, yeah, that sounds like a solution. After she left, I looked at the group, and nobody really liked that idea. And you know why? Because we really like the Park District.
We like you.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are the boat people.
That's the best thing I've heard.
Yeah, you are. And I want Diane back. and the point is this, and I'm going to approach this from a big picture. There's ownership. City does own the land. There's control. The Park District's historically controlled the boat operations, especially for power boats like my own. And they've done a great job. We don't want to see that go away. But if the city owns the land, and they've also are unilaterally, I think, closing the West Road, that has nothing to do with the Park District. That was their decision, if I remember correctly. Then they also own the problem. Park District doesn't own that problem. It's a problem that we're all here to solve, and you guys are taking a lot of heat for it. But given the commitment by the mayor and given the resolve by the city council to help us out, perhaps a different outlook on this. The Park District should continue to be the boat people, but maybe worry less about the access. If the city wants to go ahead and, if they own the land and they're owning this problem, maybe just scale back a little bit and say, okay, let's see what maybe a combined city boat community cooperation can do, and we'll just help you launch, and we'll help put in the dock and do the things that the Park District does really well. It's just an idea. I'm speaking for myself. I didn't get approval for this by by the group. But what most of us really want is the status quo. And we're not going to get the status quo because the West Road is closing. But I don't think the Park District has to stray that far from their traditional operations. They just need to maybe worry about the launch and the beach and maybe not the road. That's all I'll say. Something to chew on.
Let's talk about that, because that's an interesting point. You don't have to stay up there, but you're welcome to. And so,
You invited me.
like a true lawyer. We were not at the Saturday meeting. I assume my invitation got lost in the mail, so I won't take it too personally.
Perhaps.
And so, well, I appreciate that, although we all know that's completely untrue. And so what I learned of the meeting was very much after the fact, through a collection of emails, and I saw what was posted on some websites, and I saw notes from the meeting, and Tony and I spoke about it. So I will confess to not having personal firsthand knowledge. That said, I think the concept that you just articulated is very much what Tony and I have been talking about for the past week or so, and perhaps it has not been communicated adequately, so I will take responsibility for that. I'll blame Tony for half of it, since he was doing it too. But the notion, let me talk, the restrictions that either were okay and now aren't, but you do want some of, but not all of those. came about actually during the task force meetings when there was some original discussion about how we were going to proceed with the West Road closed, and those were some of the original operational restrictions that were presented to try and maintain two-way traffic. And so at the meeting Tuesday with the task force, we dusted off those restrictions to have a conversation with people, basically to revisit that topic. Are these the restrictions that, if this is what was necessary, you all would find acceptable? We weren't advocating them. We weren't saying that they were necessary. We were saying this is what the task force had already done. This is what they had looked at. Let's look at them again and with fresh eyes. Now, I will say I did think after we finished that meeting that there was more support for them than I'm hearing now. And in all seriousness, we deliberately went around the room and asked all the members of the task force if they were acceptable, and we heard sort of a, we'll grant you a begrudging yes, but a yes nonetheless. That said, also during that conversation for the first time, we started to have more conversations about improvements that could be made to the road by the city. And that was something that the task force had looked at but had not come to a final conclusion on. And I know since then, Tony has been working closely with the other city council members and with the mayor to see if those improvements can be made, try to figure out what they're going to cost. Will they solve the problem? Now, we don't know the answer to any of those things. I don't know what Mayor Rotering promised or didn't promise, and I'm not going to offer an opinion on that. But if she did promise you that, good for you guys, that's awesome. But really what we need to figure out, and this is, and I appreciate this, the city's commitment to doing that, and that would be great. And I do think that if we can get improvements made to the road, it has to help somewhat, right? Now, what I don't know is, does it help enough? I certainly hope it does, and that's one of the reasons why we've gone back and spoken with the traffic safety consultant that provided the first poor safety ratings on the current situation with two-way traffic, the ones and twos, to see if any of these solutions, including the restrictions that we dusted off from the task force and some of these new solutions from the city, might get it done. We don't know the answer to that yet, but we're looking at it. We also have no idea what they're going to cost, and my personal nightmare is we find out that this would be the perfect solution and they cost $10 million. But I'm sure you guys will cover that.
We have independent bonding authority.
Fantastic. Sales tax in Highland Park is now 73%. So the short answer is yes. I do think, and I think we all think that that is a potentially good solution. And again, focusing with the city's commitment, not just on helping to manage the traffic and the parking, but also to fund some of the necessary improvements down there, that would certainly allow the Park District to focus on the boating operations and continue to do the things that we do well, we like to do, and you all seem to enjoy are doing. So this notion of a third party, candidly, I don't know where that came from. I think, well, I won't speculate, but certainly it's not a conversation that has been a significant part of our dialogue, and I think we continue to look for a solution that would allow the Park District to continue to provide boating operations in a safe manner, with the city helping on the traffic and parking. Make sense?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Myers. And, you know, I haven't bounced it off the group, but if for some reason the yacht club did actually take control, was given control, we might want to contract it to the Park District. It was just an idea. Would you welcome that?
We would. It will cost about $100,000 a year, but we're good.
Thank you.
Great.
And thank you for not going with a bundle of sticks, because, okay.
Jody
Who's next?
Mordini. Good evening, President Myers, members of the board, and staff. We are pleased that there is movement to save the 2016 season, but there are a lot of moving parts, and we are concerned that everything won't be completed by the start of the season. Therefore, we, the Friends of Park Avenue Beach, ask that if everything is not 100% ready to go on the opening day of the boating season, that you save our season by using the 4% solution. Close the West Road on weekdays if you must, but until everything is ready, please consider leaving it open on the weekends so that there can be one-way traffic during peak periods. If nothing else, this will take the crisis out of implementing your initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mary Curran.
Okay, I don't want to go in reverse, but I'm just going to take a teeny time to do that. I totally agree with what Brett and the other members said, And I would kind of like to change this sign to just save access to Park Avenue. I think that closing the Rest Road in the name of security is unprecedented in U.S. history. And a year ago, when this room was packed, the initial meeting, there was a woman that got up who did a lot of research on this and did indicate that that is the case. It's a perceived threat that's cost residents of this town hundreds of man-hours of effort, resulting in a task force formed in the name of security, only to find that when they worked with the Park District, that the city council didn't even disclose the security issue to you. So a lot of the task force members that spoke to me and said, we don't even know what the issue is ourselves. So I think that you guys have taken a lot of heat unnecessarily because, as Brett mentioned, the road is the city's, and they are the ones that decided to close the road. And you guys, I don't want to say have little to do with it, but really, you do have little to do with it. Regardless of what the city council implies, I don't think there's a sleeper cell in Highland Park. And this action by the city makes us a target. I believe, this is my personal opinion, that the purpose of this is to raise the dialogue to a national level for political purposes. I said it. I am against the weekend plan. Yeah, go ahead. I know this is going to result in some form of torture. But anyways, if I leave and get pulled over by the police, Brett, stop and help me out. I am against the weekend plan because I think as residents of this community and the property taxes that we pay and the reasons that many people move to this town in the first place is for lake access. And I don't think that we should only have to have access on the weekends. And as Jody mentioned with the 4% plan, why not leave it open? And I know, Tony, you hate it when I do this, but I'm saying it. I think it's absolutely ridiculous to close it in the first place. And my other concern is just like the District 112 referendum, I didn't say that, but I think that this is going to cost us a fortune in taxes. Why should we spend all this money to fix what's not broken? I don't understand. So that's all. Thank you so much to the Park District. You guys really have taken a lot of unnecessary flack.
Thank you.
Elizabeth?
Again?
I was just answering a question last time. My name is Elizabeth Rishi. I forgot my glasses, but I think I can muddle through. No, I can muddle through this. I have a couple of questions, so thank you very much, President Myers and councilmen and council, or commissioners, I should say. Can you answer who owns the barge?
The Park District owns the barge.
Okay, thank you. And when was the barge built? Does anybody know?
Early 80s.
We acquired it in the early 80s. I don't know when it was actually
Okay.
built. I think we got it.
Yeah,
Did we get it used?
it was installed in 81.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I do agree that it would be a very nice compromise on the part of the Park District if you were willing to let the city manage public safety. One of the things that Mayor Rotering addressed on Saturday with our group, and she was very emphatic about it, as a matter of fact, her hand went like this: the city manages public safety. That's what we do. Agreed. They have the police department. It would be a wonderful compromise if the Park District could be relieved of some of that liability and let the city manage and do what they do best. And so I thank you for opening your minds to think about that. And then my third and quick point is, where are we at? Have we made any progress in committing to a long-term plan in the last 30 days?
In terms of the long-term plan, part of that is really going to depend on what the short-term solution looks like, right? So whether or not we are going to have power boating and what it's going to look like will inform what the long-term solution is going to have to include. So in other words, if we can't come up with a solution for power boating, then a long-term master plan is not going to have power boating. It's not going to work. So the concept is to get through the beginning of this boating season, see what we can do, try and get that resolved. What we're looking at, an end of February deadline, is that we're right, to figure out what we can do with this season. And then once we have an idea of what solutions are feasible, then that will inform the longer term planning. But
Well, excuse me, Scott. Liz, what do you mean by a longer-term plan? I wasn't clear what you were getting to. Are you talking about the master plan that Scott's alluding to?
Well, as you know, and I brought this up during one of the task force meetings as a visitor, was the barge. I said the barge is sinking, and someone corrected me and says the barge has sunk, as you well know.
Well,
the barge is in
that's
horrible shape.
Different issue. A second
so
on
if the
Wait,
barge,
hang on. So the barge is a different issue, right? So right now we have, we're trying to figure out what the options are with the barge, right? Which may or may not be relevant to a long-term master plan, right?
renovate, restore, remove.
Right.
Those were the three.
Right. And so we're
options.
trying to figure out which of those options are available to us with respect to the barge.
Right.
Right.
But if it meant long-term plan, you move the barge to the North Beach. I mean, that's long-term vision. Highland Park.
Right.
10
we
years,
have to figure
15,
out if the
20
barge
years.
is even movable or salvageable. Can it be repaired?
Right.
So we're doing our due diligence on the barge.
Okay.
If that's what you meant by long-term planning.
It's
then
part
that's
of
what
it.
it's
I don't see that if there's not a solution to power boating by July 15th, 2016, that's no reason not to make a long-term plan.
No, but if through the course of this process, we reach a conclusion that the Park District is not going to be able to take out the Park Avenue Beach lease, if we're not going to be able to use that facility to accomplish our mission statement, if we cannot use it to provide recreation, then we will respectfully tell the city, thank you very much, but we're not going to be able to renew the lease or negotiate the terms of a new lease. If it turns out that the only solution we have, the West Road, is going to stay closed and there's a two-way traffic solution that we have to impose, if we can't get comfortable that it is safe, then that is going to have an impact on our ability to commit to a long-term master plan down there. We are not going to put our constituents in harm's way. What we are working on is a way to avoid that problem. If the city can help us figure out how to avoid those safety issues, then once we get comfortable with that, we will have a clearer picture of what is feasible. And that would be the first step towards a master plan. What can we do? And so that's where we are. But that is a separate conversation from whether or not we can salvage the barge. Okay? Thank you. Next.
Lane Young.
Hi, I'm Lane Young. I'm a resident of Highland Park. With all due respect to my friend over there, I think I'm going to be the person that's going to...
We've officially banned the use of that phrase, with all due respect. So, blame Michael. He's the one that ruined it for everyone.
I mean, we can all debate about how much respect is really due to the park board. I would argue a large amount. Others might say a different amount. And so whatever that respect is, I thereby give it to you. I am going to get up here and be a person maligning the park board for what has happened here. When 4 years ago, little more than 4 years ago, Mayor Rodering ran her first campaign and promised unprecedented transparency. I think something that we had seen with past city council administrations were that decisions were made behind closed doors that maybe shouldn't have been made behind closed doors. As part of that, as the long-term planning for what was going to happen with the country club came, the city, as promised in her campaign, duly posted a meeting that was held between you and them, inviting the public in. That was the one and only meeting that was publicly posted. I don't know exactly why further meetings between the city and the Park District weren't publicly posted. I do find it odd that a mayor who had run on a campaign and publicly posted the first meeting didn't publicly post subsequent meetings, and so I can only be left to speculate that that was done at the request of the park board. When I sit here tonight,
Go ahead. That's adorable. Go ahead.
I don't call you adorable, Scott.
Oh, come on, Lane.
I don't think you're adorable, Lane. I think
Thanks,
he meant what you were
appreciate
saying was adorable.
It's ridiculous, Lane. Come on, knock it off.
I don't think it is ridiculous.
It is. It is completely ridiculous. You have no idea what you're talking about. You want to pick a fight? Fine, pick a fight.
All right. Can I'm surprised that I can't get through my statement.
I'm surprised too.
All right. So I'm going to continue on. So as I sit here tonight, I really do respect the way you guys run public meetings. I think that you are unlike any other unlike any other body in the fact that you really do engage with the residents here. You really are trying to. Most of the other bodies in Highland Park, whether it's the school boards or the city council, listen very respectfully and politely, and then at a different point in juncture, either choose to engage or not engage with the concerns that the residents bring up. I respect the fact that you guys have traditionally have engaged in a public forum to have that education going. I don't know why we wouldn't have more public meetings. I think that in the end, if negotiations can happen behind closed doors and results happen, then that can frequently be the best way for progress to be made. And I'm not someone that says everything needs to be done in public, because there are really good reasons. As a library board member, I understand some of those reasons you might not want everything done in public. But at the end of the day, results are what matter. And here we are, more than a year after this initially began, and there are a lot of people that have had to invest in a lot of time because results haven't happened here. And there has been, I've sat at both city council meetings and park district meetings where fingers have been pointed both ways, saying, well, we'd really like to help you on that, but that's something that only the city council can do. And the city council says, we'd really like to help you on that, but it's only something the park district can do. And why the city council and park district couldn't get together in a more honest, transparent way, if that's what's happening, then that's the way it should happen, so that we don't have to waste the hours that we have on principles that we all agree that Park Avenue Beach should be kept open to people. There's no elected official that I've heard say otherwise. And so I think I would just encourage you to take a look going forward how you are interacting not only with the city council, but with other municipal bodies with which there have been public spats that you have had in the past year, fairly or unfairly. Considering how well you run public meetings, I would think that doing some business in public would only benefit and enhance the park district. Thanks.
So let's sure.
Lane, I just finished 8 years on the Historic Preservation Commission, and I've wondered the same thing. And I think really to say that it was the Park District that didn't make this public, I beg to differ. There were a lot of things that happened on our commission that we thought should have been held in open door meetings that were held behind closed doors, not transparent. And I was at some of those meetings, and I'm sitting there testifying, wondering, okay, we're not talking about buying or selling. We're not talking about some city employee's salary. We're talking about this building, and why are we doing this behind closed doors? And we were warned by the mayor prior to our comments, everything discussed at the meeting, we're not to say anything. I'm not spilling the beans here. I'm just saying that's what we were told. So I don't think it's the Park District that has been restricting or keeping a lot of this stuff behind closed doors. I think it is the city. Sorry, Tony.
So let me say a few words about closed session in general, and then I'll talk specifically about this issue as it applies here. And I very much appreciate the kind comments. I don't appreciate at all your comments, but let's deal with the reality of the situation. It is not the city's fault. It is not the Park District's fault. It is the way the system works. There are times when it is necessary for us to speak in closed session, and there are times that it is not appropriate for us to speak in closed session. And there is a statute that governs when we can do it, how we can do it. They are all recorded. It has to be duly noticed. It's governed by the Open Meetings Act. And if anybody has any problem with the way either the city or the Park District conducts those closed meetings, there is a whole series of legal recourse of which you can avail yourselves to try and get the information that you think you are entitled. We don't meet in closed session because we are trying to keep secrets from the public. We meet in closed session because it is an opportunity for us to deal with delicate information that needs to be carefully discussed in that environment. And the reality is, under the Open Meetings Act, regardless of what we discuss in closed session, not a single piece of business can be approved in a closed session meeting. We have to come back into an open session with a public meeting like this and vote openly on what we've discussed. So there is no, I don't know what you think is happening. There is no dark corners of the Open Meetings Act where we can hide. So let's talk about how that works here in connection with Park Avenue for a second. I don't recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall any closed session meetings with the City Council at all on this topic. In fact, Tony and I have been meeting publicly with the voters. He's had open meetings with other members of the community. The task force, even though it was not necessary to comply with the Open Meetings Act, observed Open Meetings Act formalities, invited the public, kept records. So I guess it seems, I don't know, entertaining to suggest that somehow the governments of Highland Park are all plotting against the community in secret. But the reality is we volunteer for this job to try and help and get to the best solution that we can. And sometimes we have to have conversation amongst ourselves, and then we come back and tell you what we talked about and what we're going to do. So in terms of how that has worked specifically with Park Avenue Beach, I would point out that when this started over a year ago, the first step of the process was to try and keep South Beach open at Park Avenue Beach. That was the opening challenge that we all had. And from day one, we've gone from having the entire beach closed to now having the entire beach open to a very limited conversation about how we can get trailered boats down the East Road. We have been able to expand the amount of access that the city is willing to provide. They've improved room on the grassy knoll. They've committed to improving a variety of the infrastructure. And this is all through the process that you just criticized, ironically in an open meeting. So with that in mind, I would say that the processes work remarkably well. I think the mayor made a very good point yesterday, which is democracy is messy. But what does that mean? You know, there's a reason why in Illinois they've chopped up all of the governments into different groups. We have school districts, and we have park districts, and we have cities. We each have different mandates. We each have different objectives that we're trying to obtain on behalf of our constituents, some of which are the same, some of which are different. And that's a separate challenge if you think about it. Oddly enough, not every member of the park district or a resident of the park district of Highland Park resides in Highland Park. We actually have a small group of people in Deerfield, which affects the calculus to some extent. Similarly, we have Highwood with the school districts, and the city is largely confined to the city. And so what happens, the reason why we have divided it up this way, or the Illinois legislatures who put this in place, is each of these groups is supposed to fight hard for their mandate and for their constituents. And for us, that means fighting hard to make sure we have public access to recreation, right? We are beaches and trees and boats and parks. And for the city, their commitment is to make sure they are fighting hard for public safety and for sewage treatment and for clean water and for electricity and snow removal and getting that stupid branch off your yard. That's their job. The schools obviously have a mandate to educate their kids. The way the system works here is that sometimes those objectives come into conflict with each other because we all live largely in the same community. And I assume the spat you were talking about with the school district was over Westridge Park and Olson Park. And again, I would suggest to you that that's exactly how the system is supposed to work. The school district wanted something that was consistent with their mandate. They thought that was in the best interest of education. There was a conflict with our mandate to support recreation in the parks. So we had a conversation with them about it. And yes, did we disagree? We absolutely disagreed, and we came to a great resolution. And as a result, we now have kids that have access to the school property for their summer camps, and the referendum continues. Similarly with the city, we've had disagreements over various topics over the years. It's not personal. It's the city trying to protect what they need to protect, and the park district trying to protect what we need to protect. And we understand that. That's how this works. And candidly, that's what you want to have happen. I would tell you, as voters, I would not be worried when you see the governments having disagreements with each other. I'd be worried if you see us all getting along all the time, because somebody's not doing their job. So the reality is none of this is terminal. We work through these issues. Sometimes we work through them in open session. Sometimes we work through them in closed session, but we get it done. I think if you look at Highland Park over the years, it's a remarkably good track record, but it is messy. We don't always agree, but we do eventually get to the right point. I think we are on the verge of getting to the right point here. I think we'll get to the right point on a variety of other issues. Okay?
David Sogan.
That was a head fake there. You had Gene halfway up the podium.
Well, perhaps to everyone's relief, I'm David Sogan of 1092 Wade. Scott, take the address down. Because I'm pretty sure that we'll meet again this coming Saturday, and it'll probably be at our house because our other location is booked on Saturday. You are welcome to come. I think that there would be an interest in discussing master plans for Park Avenue Beach. So you can think about that. 9:30.
Fantastic.
For Scott, we'll have oatmeal. There are a couple of topics I want to talk about. First are really very straightforward. There are a couple of recommendations as we look at the parking plan at the beach. The first one is to recognize on the North Road there is parking for the water plant employees. That parking lot, the number of spaces was greatly expanded from what was there before the reconstruction of the plant. On weekends, there's only a single operator on duty, so that parking should be made available should we reach the point where there's insufficient parking on the site and make that parking available for people with lakefront parking passes on weekends. And in fact, it's not unusual for the plant operator to park actually closer to the loading dock and not necessarily in that space, but I think Don Jensen doesn't like that. The second is to point out something. When Gene and I visited our son in Omaha, I saw a parking configuration that I had never seen before, which I really think we should consider. And this is diagonal parking where you back into the space so that when you pull out, you are pulling out into traffic. And one of the more difficult problems we will have if there's a lot of traffic is when you're backing out and you can't see. It is an opportunity to get hit. So this would perhaps be a safer way to have people, because then they could exit into the traffic flow and see what's coming. So it's one thing to consider. It's likely that the traffic engineer we've hired is probably not thinking about that, but having seen it, it really, if you think about it, makes a tremendous amount of sense. And as long as I'm still talking about parking, I want to talk about parking in the context of some of the reports that were coming out of the meeting from last Tuesday had to do with, oh, we're going to have to raise fees up very high. And this topic, Liza's going to smile because we've had an ongoing conversation about this for some time. I have to go back to 2012 when things were normal and we had a $5 a day charge for daily parking. In 2012, we sold about $2,400 worth of parking stickers. That was revenue. In 2014, when that was the first year in 2013 we were on the north side. 2014 was the first year we were back on the south beach. And in that year, we also had the swimming beach at the north end. That year, the parking was raised to $10 for residents and $20 for non-residents. A whopping $300 was sold of parking passes.
So you're saying when the price of something goes up, people buy less of it?
A lot less of it.
Whoa, I'm writing that down.
Yes.
That's a thing. Okay.
And rather than belittle my point is...
I'm not belittling it. I think you've proven the law of demand.
Well, it ended up that the Park District ended up losing revenue rather than gaining revenue by quite a bit. And the same thing happened in 2015. Liza tells me there was about $200 worth of daily parking passes. Now, part of the logic that was put forth was that you should have the same parking fee structure for Rosewood and all lakefront parking. But I think in terms of a revenue stream, that's very much not what you want to have happen, at least not what I would want to have happen. I'd rather see that we had the $2,400 in fees coming in rather than just having something the same from one.
Well, let me help for a second. I mean, part of the problem with that logic is that even though you increase price and you decrease the amount that is purchased, there is typically, or can be, an offset in expenses. If you have less cars, then there's less money you have to spend on repairs. There's a variety of other, so you have to look at the totality.
Yes, but you're not responsible for the roads.
But it's not about revenue. No. What I'm talking about is it's not just when you look at the law of demand, you also look at the law of supply. And there's a revenue component and there's an expense component. So if there are fewer people using a facility, then there can be offsetting expenses to offset the revenues. I'm not saying it would be the case. I'm saying that the math that you were giving me is incomplete. It may be correct, but understand that it's half the story.
We can have the argument, we could try to come out with the expenses, but I still think in the end, the raising of the fees to the level that they were ended up with a decrease in revenue. And my concern is that if fees go up on the site at Park Avenue, we may look at an unintended consequence of decreasing, not increasing revenue to pay for additional expenses.
No, I
but
get
it's going to go, you know, it could conceivably go down to the extent where people just simply can't afford the site.
I understand the point you're making. I think it is a challenge that all governments have, particularly when you're looking at an activity that is not operating under what I would call general market conditions. This is not where you have a free market, because the Park District is already subsidizing an activity that the market would not provide on its own. So the general laws of supply and the general laws of demand don't work here, right? So what we have to do is make some guesses and assumptions to try and figure out how to balance a bunch of issues. So I hear exactly what you're saying. I get it.
And also, just briefly, we subsidized Rosewood Beach based on the last full report I could get, something on the order of $80,000 of expense. Park Avenue, from the numbers that I've gotten from Liza, the 80,000, the 10,000, it was 10,000 at the report in November. I guess it was 10 months, and Liza gave me some additional information that the total expense or negative to the Park Avenue Beach was about $20,000.
We spend about $40,000 a year. The subsidy to Park Avenue Beach is about $40,000. Trust me.
I'm just going by the numbers that I was given.
Me too. It's $40,000.
What the $20,000 didn't include was the $30,000 for dredging.
But we pay that.
You pay that. I know that, and that comes out of capital.
Right. So it's about a $40,000 subsidy from the taxpayers to Park Avenue Beach.
And we probably have pretty close to the same number of users at Park Avenue Beach as you do at Rosewood. I mean, there are a lot of people there. I'm done, but not with the family, because Jean's going to talk to you.
Okay.
Well, the better.
Jean Sogan. My name's Jean Sogan. I know you'll all be surprised. We live at the same place. And
see you Saturday.
Is Scott invited over?
all of you. First, I want to comment on the long-term plan question. I don't usually talk about my academic background. I have a master's in city planning from the University of London. I taught city planning at the University of Minnesota. I wrote a Parks and Recreation plan for the city of St. Paul. I've done planning consulting around the country. And the thing about when you were talking about the plan, Scott, you were sort of jumping to conclusions about it. That a plan goes through a process, and if you try and jump the gun and say what you think is going to be the conclusion, it's no help at all. You're going.
Jean, let me jump in 1 second. I will let you finish, but
Okay.
I'm going to respectfully disagree, because my only point was, right now the Park District does not have a lease. We have no property interest at all. Whether we choose to undertake a lease is going to depend on the conversations that we're having.
Yes, but whether you have the long-term, but you do own the North Beach. And the question of what happens on the North Beach is just as interesting as what happens on the South Beach. And the question of what happens to the whole property, the North Beach and the South Beach, we had talked in the past was going to be a joint planning effort between the Park District and the city. And how that works out, the planning process will get you there. That's my first thought about having done a lot of planning. And the second thought is one of the problems with planning is that it's a long-term process, and you can't stop the world for planning. You still have to do whatever you have to do in the short term, and as best you can, you hope that it'll fit into what the long term is doing. But those two are going along. You don't stop one for the other. That's all I'm going to say on my planning lecture. I think it's just remarkable that in the 18 months that we've been all talking together, the power boaters and the other boaters and the people who just casually come down to the beach have done really well about staying on the same page and saying we support one another. And I'm afraid that this is all going to come down to a parking question, and at the end, that coalition could fall apart. And in order for it not to fall apart, and it's really wonderful for the community that it's staying together, and in order for it to stay together, we need you to go to bat on the parking, that we squeeze every single. David was talking about there's the parking spaces that the water treatment plant employees use. Squeeze those out. Do you remember when the guy from the traffic engineer was saying that we needed 14-foot roadways, even though on highways that's only 12 feet, and because we need 14 feet, we couldn't have diagonal parking? And Tony said that he would try and talk to them and see if we could get diagonal parking out of that. We need the diagonal parking, that the difference between diagonal parking and parallel parking is a lot of parking spaces. This is the kind of thing that it doesn't happen in a public meeting. And that's just fine. It's negotiations between one or two, 2 or 3 people usually. We need you to go to bat for us on every single parking space, because otherwise we're going to end up at absolutely the 11th hour with a portion of the beach community feeling like, remember in the 60s, to destroy the village, to save the village, we needed to destroy it. We don't want to be there, and that you're the ones who can go to bat for us on that. So that's one thing. Then the last one is there is a great place to get parking, and we've talked about it in the past. Build the stairs going up to Central Park. That there's a whole bunch of Rick, we've had a lot of conversation about it, that if you don't want to do something, you can set up the specs so it's not going to happen. It didn't happen because you were going to build a really remarkable Cadillac, and that Cadillac was going to be super expensive. And part of the justification for that was the mesh treads, so the snow could go through and they would be clear in the winter, was a lot more expensive. As you know, I'm a runner, and I run up, now that the dog's gone, I run up the steps at Rosewood Beach every day. Sometimes, and the steps are never shoveled. And sometimes I'm sort of hauling myself up the steps. But the steps are okay. I can manage it. It's not nearly as scary as the metal mesh steps, which ice up. So that my point on this is that it's only crazy people like me who are using the steps in the winter. And that, I'll figure it out, and I'm not going to blame you if I fall on the steps. But if we could have the steps in the summer, it means that suddenly when it's crowded, when we can tell people just park up above, and it's going to make a huge difference in how much parking there is down there. I feel like the city has put, a week ago, it seemed like the city wasn't putting a lot into the game. They were just saying close the West Road and do what you want, telling us that they're going to widen the North Road, they're going to pave, they're going to put personnel down there. That's just huge. That's just remarkable. And maybe it's going to work fine. And sometimes that happens. But that the parking is something that you can help us out with, and we really need the help. Thanks.
Thanks, Gene.
Janice Goldsmith.
Real quick, I just want to say a word about parking. And again, I don't think there's any disagreement. It is certainly the Park District's goal, the city's goal, to make sure that we have as much parking down there as we can. Now, the key phrase is as we can. And there are constraints that are both in terms of space, how much land there is down there, and there are constraints in terms of safety. How much parking can you have with two-way traffic? And so our objective is to figure out how we can keep as much parking as we can with the constraint. This is where we started the conversation. It's a balance. And so that's part of the conversation that we are continuing to have with the city. And if their risk tolerance and ability to manage with fewer restrictions on parking can result in more spaces, and I think that's a good thing, and we will see if we can do that. Again, part of the details. I will spare everyone a conversation about the steps, other than to just briefly say this was a joint project that both the city and the Park District undertook 3 years ago, I don't remember, and we all very much wanted to do it 4 years ago, and we thought it would cost much less than it wound up actually costing. And even if we were willing to pay it, there's a problem, which is gravity, and the stairs fall down. And in order to keep them from falling down, you have to drive cement pilings down basically to the center of the earth. So it is not just trying to make them winter-proof. There's also ADA constraints. There's a variety of things that go into how we do the math. But you had the entire city council and the entire park district looked at this, wanting to do the project, and reached the unfortunate conclusion that it was just not going to be realistic. So there's steps lots of places. That doesn't mean we can build the same steps over here. Each place is different. It's okay. Charge for parking? Right. I like that idea. That's good. That's good. Oh, then who cares? Kidding. Is that yours?
I think it is, I don't know.
All right, then go build those stairs, Tony. Sometimes we just put the signs up. We hope they don't notice. Okay, who else?
Janice Goldsmith.
Because I've already said my nasty comments, and I'll be redundant and repeat it. Go ahead.
My name is Peter Mordini. I live at 1853 Sheehan Court, Highland Park. Scott, I think the key is, like Gene says, the parking. And as far as going to bat, you know, I'm a guy with a good gut feeling, and I think Scott, during that meeting we had last, because I just want to let the public know that I'm in that closed-door meeting with everyone, and when Scott said to me my opinion in that plan, and Nelson was not endorsing it, just for the record, and poor David Moltek has hit his head down. But when he said to me, I think I was the first one to reach out, and I said, I was looking at the plan up there, and I said, Scott, or I didn't say Scott, I'm sorry, I said, what I see here is being a seasoned veteran to myself. I said that since 1989 on that lakefront, doing all the driving and the trailering and any kind of machinery down there. I said, this is a plan that's going to fail. It's going to be a domino effect, and it's going to kill the lake. And to my surprise, to my right, Liza and Scott agreed with me. And that gave me hope, actually, because that's going to tell me that Scott and Liza and Tony, mostly in Scott's part, because he's holding the whole parking deal as far as safety, that I think deep down inside that Scott and Tony will figure out that parking down there. I think they realize that that's the key here, is for everyone to park. And to get to that point is, I think they're going to re-implement, like the mayor said, even if it takes me to build a sidewalk on the grassy knoll with a ramp going up, and I was there at that meeting when she was there, and to get the pedestrians in their own personal loop, they're out of the equation. The camps aren't there. Launching one trailer at a time, really easy. Doing a far loop so there's no backing up down that road, and you just do the backing up at the ramp. There's so many things that we can imply that I think hopefully Scott is going to do, that I have faith in this next meeting, March 1st, that we're going to get through this. And I think Scott and Tony know that key is the parking. And whether it be parallel or what have you, but I think if we just put our heads together and scale back a little bit, we'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
We're done.
Yes, Jane.
The Jane's one.
That's for last.
Sorry, I wasn't going to talk, but here I am.
Oh, we saw you run up earlier. We know you were going to talk.
I just want to enumerate. I was at the meeting on Saturday when Mayor Nancy Rodering showed up, and I was a little upset that we didn't enumerate what she promised us. So I will enumerate it to the commissioners and the Park District Board, so please be ready to write this down?
We have it on film.
Okay. So she promised us that, well, she first stated that the city was still dedicated to keeping access for all. And she wanted to assure us that whatever it took, and that included widening the North Road, softening the turning radiuses on the north side, the North Road, the East Road on the north end and on the south end, fixing the potholes on the East Road and repaving, striping the road as needed, and also striping the parking spots. And lastly, to increase safety, she was willing to provide police or rent-a-cop patrols on the weekends and holidays. So this, to me, because I was on the Park Avenue Task Force Committee, seems like they have come halfway, if not a little bit more than halfway. So now I think, as the Park District and as the small working committee, we need to find this resolution soon because it is already spring. So let's get this done. Like you said, you guys are working together. Let's get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have anything? Councilman.
Did you sign up?
I did last year.
Okay.
First of all, there's been a lot of suggestion that it's very important that the City of Highland Park and the Park District work together, and I appreciate that, except that we have been. For about a year, the Park Avenue Task Force, which the Park District formed, had the goal of trying to find a solution to providing all of the activities that we're all concerned stay at Park Avenue Beach. They had several restrictions, one of which was they could not recommend a solution that included the use of the West Road. They ignored that. Their own chairman, who is not a voting member of that group, cautioned them not to use that opportunity to make a political statement and to understand this was a restriction the city insisted on. Nevertheless, they made that recommendation, and it's not workable. The city is not willing to do that. We can all have a discussion about the West Road at another time. You can all come to the city council meeting where that's an appropriate discussion. You shouldn't be burdening the Park District with your concerns about our decision. But they didn't come to a resolution within the confines of what they were assigned. And I understand that, but at that meeting, despite that recommendation, this Park District, to their credit, still tried to figure out if they could arrive at a workable solution given some traffic studies that had been done that admittedly had very low safety ratings, I think a 1 or a 2 out of a 5. And they can't do that, and I think I understand why. I stood up at that meeting and I said, gosh, you know, there's a lot of room on the east side. There must be a way to continue to have boating. I will try to do this in an informal effort to work with the Park District, with the rest of my council members, with Mayor Rodering and our staff. And Scott offered the access to me of his staff directly or through his staff. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm not interested in process. I'm not interested in the Open Meetings Act, so we're meeting with less than 3 people from our group and from the Park District. We just want to get it done. I'm really not interested in the political discussions about how we got here, whether the council made an appropriate decision or not to close the West Road, whether the Park District made the right decision to do this, that, or the other thing. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in having boating. I'm interested in having fishing. I'm interested in people being able to walk down and use the lake. I grew up in Highland Park. I've used that lake for 50-odd years. I sail. I've been on motorboats on that lake. I understand what it means to all of you, and so does the Park District. So when you ask us to cooperate, you're already about 3 weeks late. We've been cooperating. We've made tremendous progress, and I think the greatest progress that we've made is to really understand each of our respective roles, and I think that the mayor apparently articulated that at this impromptu meeting that happens on Saturday or Sunday mornings at the police department. We have talked about being able to have the city operate what the city operates. Our property is the concrete area on the east side of the plant. It includes the plant. It moves all the way to the ramp where boating occurs. If we can control the traffic, we're familiar with traffic safety issues. We understand what traffic studies mean. There is a high degree of likelihood we will have traffic managers down there, people who are trained by our police department to help manage traffic during peak periods so that there aren't accidents and so that we can maintain a substantial amount, and maybe all of the parking, but maybe a little less than all of the parking. There has been a lot of discussion about parking. Nobody wants to eliminate it, but we want to make sure it's safe. If we have people whose job is to manage traffic, it would seem to me that we can have a lot more parking. The idea of angling the spaces and having people park in a direction so that they can pull out directly, we've talked about that. I think that would make a lot of sense in terms of the diagonal spaces where the trailers are parked when they're empty. Being able to get out of there, get your boat, and move straight out. All of these things are on the table. We've talked to our Public Works Department about widening the North Road. If that's necessary, we have the ability to do it. I don't know that it's necessary, but if it is, we are committed to doing that. It's not going to be done at the beginning of the boating season because asphalt plants don't open until, as I understand it, May. But we are able and willing to do it if it's necessary. We have talked about and are willing to remove a curb on the south corner that would add an additional 4 feet to the turning radius where the pirouette has to occur. So we're all working together. The city doesn't want to be in the traffic management business, and they shouldn't have to be. The Park District doesn't want to be in the traffic management business, and they shouldn't have to be. We are. That's what we're good at. So I think we've understood our respective roles. It's taken a little wrangling. As Scott said, that's part of government. It's messy. Sometimes we disagree with each other, but we are getting it done. It's not a guarantee. It's not done yet until an official says it's done. But I'm very comfortable and I'm very enthusiastic that we're moving in the right direction. We've had some bumps along the way, but we've had a lot of cooperation also from many of you, the 4 who have attended the meeting. Alan Cohn, the Commodore of the Yacht Club, has been very helpful. He attended the last meeting. So keep your fingers crossed. I'm quite hopeful, as I have been throughout all of this. But I really want you to understand that all of this has been open. All of this has been moving very quickly and very effectively for you. Thank you.
Commodore.
Hi, I'm Alan Cohen. I'm the Commodore of the Yacht Club. I was just introduced. Thank you. I just want to ask again about the restrictions. It seems like when the restrictions were formulated, the Park District felt like they were going to be operating the whole site. Now, the city has said that the public safety function will operate the site. Do you see the restrictions being reduced because of that?
I would say that the restrictions that we discussed at this meeting on Tuesday and that have come up tonight were a product of the task force. That's where those originally came from. And the discussion that we were having was, again, I know I'm somewhat repeating what I said before, if this is what was necessary to make it safe, are you all willing to live with these restrictions, not only on behalf of yourselves individually, but on behalf of your constituents? You recall this conversation. Because really what we were trying to get to, and I get the restrictions, they're bad. We all get it. Nobody wants to do them. And I am concerned about the impact they would have on the lake. But what we were trying to get to was if it turns out that that's what we had to do, is at a price that we as a community are willing to pay. And certainly it is something that we would need input on in making that decision. And so that was where the question arose. And the consensus around the table at the time seemed to be, yes, if this is really what we need to do to make it safe, we could live with them. We would prefer not to, as would we all. That is a different conversation than the one that we have been having. Because those restrictions, as you just pointed out, because it came from the task force with an assumption that the Park District would continue to be responsible from the top to the bottom, that calculus definitely is different if the city is involved in getting the boats to the ramp and our involvement is limited to getting the boats in and out of the water and providing the other related boating services. That is not traffic, that is not parking, is not pedestrian and public safety outside of the boating operations. So I think that is where the conversation is currently.
The follow-up to that conversation was that there would be substantial increases in fees. There will be launch and storage fees, and even a substantial increase in the rent that the yacht club pays for the use of the building. Do you still see those? I think the explanation for those increase in fees was perhaps twofold. One was to make up for lost revenue, as the restrictions were expected to reduce the traffic, reduce the usage of the site. And at the same time, an increase in fees would actually deter, using that supply and demand, to some extent the use of the site. And I think I asked at that time, can you put some numbers on that? Can you estimate what the increase would be to the yacht club for renting the building? Those are some things we need to know about. What do you foresee on that?
Right. And so do you want to?
I just wanted to address that pretty much.
Sure.
I'll just do it from here. Because we are probably going to have traffic management down there, we may be able to have more boats launching at one time, and it may increase the amount of fees that the district is comfortable selling. It's also going to change, I would imagine, as the summer goes on, people become more used to it. The principal problem is at peak times. We can space those launches out a little bit at peak times and have traffic management there. We should still be able to be pretty close to the numbers that have been there in the past. I think that's the goal. I think it would be unrealistic to expect that it would be exactly the same, but that's sort of where we're heading. So I think it may be difficult to answer that at this moment.
I would just add to that it's at the peak times that were mentioned, I think 9 to 1 or 9 to 2 on Saturdays and Sundays. This is starting from 9 to noon is when we operate our Learn to Sail program on 8 weekends of the summer. And so there are 12 students and a couple of instructors, probably 6 instructors and assistants, so there's like 18 cars there just for the sailing program.
The peak times that were explained to us by the boaters at the meeting before you were there was 11 to noon. I think conservatively 10 to noon would be appropriate. There are heavier times of general automobile usage based on some of the numbers that we've gotten from the Park District. But in terms of peak time of trailered boat launches, I was told it was in that 1 hour period. I would say conservatively it's probably 2.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? That was fun. Let's do it again.
Scott?
Yes.
I have one thing I'd like to add.
Yes, sir.
There's one topic that hasn't been brought up tonight, and it's more of a question or a comment rather than I guess some more feedback. But I would like to know, when you have this working group that you're talking about, I would like to know when you come back to the park board what the plan is in case of an emergency situation down there. A storm comes up, need to get people off the lake and very quickly, and I want to make sure that that's part of the presentation that comes back to the Park District and also to the city, how they address that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other comments on boating? If not, I'm going to suggest that we take a brief recess, and we will then reconvene in 5 minutes. No closed session. To an open session to actually get to the business items on our agenda. So, 5-minute recess.
That
too.
A little bit.
A little bit.
He's more comfortable here. But is he going to talk about it being adorable?
Nice. Okay, I appreciate that.
All right. Have a.
Let's go.
Good night. All right, we are back in regular session, 5 to 8. Still February 23rd, but it seems much later. So, on to new business. No, I'm sorry, I'm still reading from the turn page on the agenda. So, having completed public comments, we'll now turn to our consent agenda. You see items A through G listed. All items have been previously discussed or provided in the board packets. Are there any requests to remove anything from the consent agenda?
Yes.
May I go? I'm sorry. I do have a question about item C, which is the dredging bid. And I know the Park Avenue is something we just finished talking about. Is this a contract that if, for whatever reasons, we're not in the boating business, we can terminate?
Or we can transfer it to the city.
It will provide for that?
We can make it provide, well, we can't make it provide for it right now. We just wanted to have dredging so that if boating happens, we're not waiting.
I
No, I
think
appreciate
what
that.
Barney's asking is, if we get the bid, do we have to follow through and execute on it if it turns out that that's no longer in our portfolio?
We think that we're obligated to follow through with the project if we accept the bid. We could request of the contractor to relieve us of that obligation, but I believe otherwise.
I have a solution. I think from a timing perspective, why don't we go back and talk to the contractor and we'll come back if we need to have a special meeting at the end of the workshop meeting in March to get the answers. We could do it that way and just take it off the agenda tonight and not approve it.
That's fine. We can also have a conversation with the city as well to see that if it winds up being necessary, if it's something that they're interested in. So, fine. So we'll remove item C from the consent agenda. Any other requests?
Yes, with regard to item A, which was the minutes of the January 26th regular board meeting, I just want to make one correction. There was a provision in there. There was a statement in there that I made a statement about the golf numbers being up from 2015 versus 2014. I wanted to be clear in the minutes that I was talking about Sunset Valley Golf Course and not necessarily, I wasn't talking about the Highland Park Country Club.
Okay, duly noted.
Yeah. So can we make that change to the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the minutes will be amended. Any other questions, comments?
Move approval. Second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified by removing item C and modifying the minutes as referenced by Commissioner Bernstein. We have a motion and a second. Any further debate? Can we call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein?
Aye.
Commissioner Flores-Weiskopf?
Aye.
Commissioner Kaplan?
Aye.
Vice President Ruttenberg?
Aye.
President Myers?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Next item, unfinished business. Item A, an ordinance providing for the issue of not to exceed $3 million of general obligation limited tax park bond, Series 2016, for park purposes and for payment of the expenses incident thereto, providing for the levy of a direct annual tax to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof. Director Curtis. Welcome.
Good evening, everybody. I am very happy to report to the board that we received our Moody's AAA bond rating for this issuance and for the continuing issuance on the debt certificates that are outstanding.
That is huge. Congratulations again. I know we've talked about it. It's fantastic.
It is wonderful. It is wonderful. It says a lot about the management of the Park District, not just the staff, but the board as well, to keep us in very safe financial situation. Moody's, that presentation that we gave was about 45 minutes, and the questions that they asked were very detailed. So they were definitely looking and asking for things, so this was definitely well earned. So congratulations to everybody. Tonight's ordinance number 1601, providing for the issue of not to exceed $3 million general obligation limited tax park bond series 2016 is presented to the board. The ordinance addresses such items as the board's authority to issue bonds, the use of the proceeds, which are going to be used to support Green Print 2024, and then it outlines the bond details. This is a 5-year bond maturing December 2020, with interest payments made on June 15th and December 15th, and a yearly principal payment made on December 15th. The sale is set for Thursday, February 25th at 10 a.m., and the preliminary official statement has been distributed by PMA. That was distributed on February 19th. And that went out to various industry resources, such as the Bond Buyer's Guide, as well as PMA's extensive listing and its posting on their website. Bob Lewis from PMA is here to answer any questions that the board may have regarding the ordinance and the upcoming sale. I would like to say it's been a pleasure working with Bob on this project, and I'm wondering if the board has any questions or if would like to hear from Bob.
I think we would. Why don't you give us an overview on the process generally, the specifics, and what we should expect coming up?
And what we would anticipate as an interest rate.
That was my question.
Yeah, sorry.
And how much we save by keeping our AAA rating.
Yes. Well, Annette's already done a very good summary of everything up to now. So on Thursday morning, bids will come in around 10 a.m. Anticipate you will receive several bids, somewhere probably between 5 to 8 bids, I would anticipate. Your issue would be very attractive, obviously because of AAA rating, but it's also a relatively short issue. We're only going out 5 years. And that makes it more attractive because a lot of investors want to be shorter on the curve right now. And that leads to more demand when you go to sell them. When we did the analysis, we had an estimated all-in true interest cost rate of a 1.76%. When this analysis was last run, rates were a little higher, so I hope that you'll come in lower than that at the time of sale. You have, as I mentioned, it's a relatively short issue. You only have 5 payments. If you recall, those payments have to fit into your what's called the debt service extension base. That it limits the annual levy you can have on your general obligation bonds. That amount is about $1.5 million per year. You have not used that extension base in a while, and so the way the bonds are constructed is that you would go use half of that the next levy year 15, which will be the taxes collected this summer. So that first payment will be roughly $740,000, and the subsequent payments are a little less than that, about $600,000 per year. Because we're planning on you issuing more bonds next year if you follow your plan of finance. So we need to make sure we leave room for those bonds in the structure. Once the bids are taken, the bid form will need to be signed by Ms. Curtis, and also I think we've set up for either the board president or vice president to sign it, because the ordinance you're adopting tonight sets forth delegates to approve the sale, subject to meeting those parameters that we just discussed. And those delegates usually set to be one elected official, one administrative official. Once that bid form is signed, that essentially functions as a contract between you and the underwriter. And then the attorneys will move everything towards a closing in approximately 3 weeks. They'll prepare a slew of documents which will feel like a mortgage closing, and those will be delivered to Ms. Curtis so that she can then set up a time for the board officers to sign these documents. Once those are signed, they're returned back to the bond attorneys, and then I can't remember the exact closing date. I know it's mid-March, the 17th. On the 17th of March, that's when you'll receive your proceeds, and then the underwriter will receive its interest in the bonds, which of course is transferred to a big book entry only process to your actual investors that buy your bonds. Any other questions?
Questions or comments from the board?
Just a quick question, and that this is consistent with the plan that we discussed through the green print process, and okay.
This is the first step of it. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I do have one question. I think, Cal, you might have asked it, but what would the difference, in your estimate, of having less than a AAA rating be on the interest rate?
Yes, you did ask that. I'm sorry I didn't answer that.
Oh, he asked it.
I just
you did ask that. On an issue, to be frank, on an issue this short, it probably wouldn't be that much, maybe 5-10 basis points, which isn't going to translate into a lot of dollars because there's not a lot of risk. The value of the AAA rating gets more valuable the longer the bond issue. So I would say, the next series is planned to be several, I can't remember exactly how many years, but it's going to be out 10, 12 years. There you probably see a 10, 15 basis point benefit. And the Highland Park name is...
Do me a favor, translate. Basis point means what?
0.1%.
Okay.
Or 0.1% is 10 basis points. 1 basis point is 0.01%. The Highland Park name is well known in the municipal bond marketplace. You're in Lake County. Typically, bonds sold in Illinois carry a little bit of a penalty just because you're in Illinois and there's a stigma attached to it. But that stigma is reduced to some degree depending on your location. So your bonds are a little bit immunized just because they're short, they're Highland Park, they're AAA, you're in Lake County. You have a lot of things going for you. The only thing that's not going for you is Illinois. You're not a school district. You don't really rely upon the state for anything. So I anticipate your penalty on an issue this short would be very small.
Great. Any other? Lori? Oh, I thought you said something.
So are we looking for a motion in this?
Financial question.
Yes.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any debate? Okay, can you call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein?
Aye.
Commissioner Flores Weisskopf?
Aye.
Commissioner Kaplan?
Aye.
Vice President Ruttenberg?
Aye.
President Myers?
Aye. Ayes have it, motion carried. The ordinance is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
Park Avenue update. Liza, anything to add to the conversation that we just had?
I do not.
Okay. So let's do the treasurer's report. Next item.
As usual, the treasurer's report is included in your or in the board packet. Because 2016 is the second year with a calendar year end, the prior year information, those last two columns on the right-hand side that we were kind of ignoring, are now in play because those are the prior year information, and both 2015 and 16 were calendar years. So both the month and the year to date are relevant, as the information on the report is of January 2015. So last year we kind of weren't using those two columns because of the 9-month year as opposed to the 12-month year, and now we finally aligned. I'm very excited. I am very excited. I know nobody else here has even thought about it, but I'm very excited because that report is a very useful tool for staff because it provides a comparison of both the monthly, year-to-date, to budget, and to the prior year. So it is fully working as a tool for staff and management. So I'm very excited about that. This is the first month of the year. It's difficult to draw any strong conclusions to the overall operations. It's kind of in line with budget and definitely in line with last year. I would like to say, though, that there was no activity in the special rec fund, the debt service fund, and the capital fund to date.
Excellent,
Are there
thank you.
any questions?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
New business, director's report.
Annette, before you leave, I just want to take this opportunity and recognize Annette and Connie from Annette's department is here tonight. I think this is the 26th year that the Park District of Highland Park is being awarded with the Government Finance Officers Association, that's this one, Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, which is presented to the Park District of Highland Park for its comprehensive annual financial report for the 9 months ended December 31st, 2014, our one and only 9-month budget. So here for your... So I would just like to thank Annette and all of her staff because she's done a great job in really working on understanding the total financial picture of the Park District, and she has been great to work with. So.
And I think the board certainly echoes that sentiment. Why don't you step up? You were in this.
We will ask for a group photo with this when the meeting is over.
continue on. Then old news, which is new news tonight because we actually have the plaque we received for Rosewood Beach for the Outstanding Facility and Parks Award presented by the Illinois Park and Recreation Association at its annual meeting at the state conference in January. So it's here. We're very pleased with that. And again, thank you all for your support with that. On to other business. Good news on the Park Foundation front. I reported at the last meeting that Liz and I had been working on this project and that we were dealing with the National Association of Park Foundations. So we had a meeting yesterday with Donald, their executive director, and we are now officially incorporated as the Park Foundation of Highland Park.
All right.
So procedurally, that's done.
That's
That was the easy thing, and we got the incorporation papers within an hour of filing. So Donald kind of assisted us with that. So the next bigger task is going to be establishing our 501c3 status with the Internal Revenue Service. So we actually, what Liz and I talked about with Donald yesterday was the opportunity to have Donald come to probably a workshop meeting in April and talk about the role of the foundation and how it relates and interacts with the role of the Park District and the Park Board. And that will give you all a better understanding of how the two organizations will work with each other, yet separate from each other, but supporting the mission of the Park District. So that was good news on that front. Then on to some event activity. Just a note on winter registration, certainly at Centennial. Always good to report when numbers are up, and in reviewing the director's report, you can see that in both gymnastics and ice for winter registrations are up. Ice is actually up 40 participants from 2015, and gymnastics is up 27. And then I think as you go through the report, you'll see that registration is doing well. The one thing that I want to comment on is the one area that was not at the same number as it was in 15 is our camp enrollment, but Liz and the marketing staff have come up with a new means for sort of target marketing camp registration. They've done a lot of analytics, and they actually know when the best times for people to register for programs are. So through their efforts, our camp numbers are now past 2015, and it's just great to have some good creativity on target marketing for a lot of not only camps but other programs as well. And then on the event front, we had actually, this is odd for me to say that Sunset Valley Golf is open, and we had 87 rounds last Saturday.
Wow.
There were actually about 13 golfers out today. Staying on the spring theme, the hard to believe, but Breakfast with the Bunny and the annual egg hunt takes place on March 19th. And then going backwards in time, we had the Nature Discovery Day at Heller on February 6th, and it was hardly a winter, it's an outdoor activity. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't very cooperative, but our staff had a great backup plan, and we ended up having about 300 participants there. And then this past Saturday night, we held the annual, back in our day, it was the daddy-daughter date night, and that was what it was called, but now it's moved on to more exotic names. So it was the glass slipper ball. And again, our staff did an amazing job in creating the wow factor. And once again, some of our staff, along with Commissioner Flores Weisskopf, served as Disney characters, and I believe you were Snow White?
I was not, Snow White was there.
Oh, you were not Snow White, sorry.
I cannot confirm nor deny. I just know she was there.
But, we got some really nice feedback from that event, and it's a great event for dads and their daughters. And we actually, I'm told we had more the dads were more active on the dance floor than they've been in the past. So it was a great night, and it is very nice being able to host that event at the Country Club. And with that being said, I have nothing further.
Excellent. Questions or comments from the board?
I think we shouldn't skip over some of the positive numbers. For example, at the rec center, I just saw, I haven't just seen, body transformation registration, 214 versus 162 last year. I mean, the numbers of so many of the programs, I just pulled that one out of the list. The program registration numbers that we are experiencing are just amazing. And I think that is just such a great compliment to the staff who have worked so hard to make these programs. Personal training, up 23%. We could just go down a whole list. I'm just picking out the rec center, but throughout our programs. I think that's wonderful.
How can we get them more room to train?
That's a good question. For another day.
For another day.
For another day.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. We've already dealt with public comment, but just to make sure, is there anybody left from the public that would like to address something that has not been covered? All right, let's do this. Before we go into open meetings, I want to take a brief 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back. So before we go into close. So let's take a 5-minute recess.
Ready here?
We'll now turn to our consent agenda. You see items A through G listed. All items have been previously discussed or provided in the board packets. Are there any requests to remove anything from the consent agenda?
Yes. I'm sorry. I do have a question about item C, which is the dredging bid. And I know the Park Avenue is something we just finished talking about. Is this a contract that if, for whatever reasons, we're not in the boating business, we can terminate?
Or we can transfer it to the city.
We will provide for that?
We can make it provide. Well, we can't make it provide for it right now. We just wanted to have dredging so that if voting happens, we're not waiting.
I think what Barney's asking is, if we get the bid, do we have to follow through and execute on it if it turns out that that's no longer in our portfolio?
My belief is that we're obligated to follow through with the project if we accept the bid. We could request of the contractor to relieve us of that obligation, but I believe otherwise. We haven't signed a contract.
I think from a timing perspective, why don't we go back and talk to the contractor and we'll come back. If we need to have a special meeting at the end of the workshop meeting in March to get the answers, we could do it that way and just take it off the agenda tonight and not approve it.
That's fine. We can also have a conversation with the city as well to see that if it winds up being necessary, it's something that they're interested in. So, fine. So let's remove item C from the consent agenda. Any other requests?
Yes, so with regard to item A, which was the minutes of the January 26th regular board meeting, I just want to make one correction. There was a provision in there, there was a statement in there that I made a statement about the golf numbers being up from 2015 versus 2014. I wanted to be clear in the minutes that I was talking about Sunset Valley Golf Course and not necessarily, I wasn't talking about my home country.
Okay. Duly noted.
So can we make that change to the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the minutes will be amended. Any other questions, comments?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified by removing item C and modifying the minutes as referenced by Commissioner Bernstein. We have a motion and a second. Any further debate? We call the roll.
Commissioner Bernstein?
Aye.
Commissioner Flores Weisskopf? Aye. Commissioner Kaplan?
Aye.
Vice President Ruttenberg?
Aye.
President Myers?
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Next item, unfinished business. Item A, an ordinance providing for the issue of not to exceed $3 million of general obligation limited tax park bond, Series 2016, for park purposes and for payment of the expenses incident thereto, providing for the levy of direct annual tax to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof. Director Curtis. Welcome.
by Moody's AAA bond rating for this issuance and for the continuing issuance on the debt certificates that are outstanding.
That is huge. Congratulations, you guys.
It
Talk
is-
about it. It's
It is,
fantastic.
it is wonderful, it is wonderful. It says a lot about the management of the Park District, not just the staff, but the board as well, to keep us in a very safe financial situation. Moody's, that presentation that we gave was about 45 minutes, and the questions that they asked were very detailed. So they were definitely looking and asking for things, so this was definitely well earned. So congratulations to everybody. Tonight's ordinance number 1601, providing for the issue of not to exceed $3 million general obligation limited tax park bond series 2016 is presented to the board. The ordinance addresses such items as the board's authority to issue bonds, the use of the proceeds, which are going to be used to support Green Credit 2024, and then it outlines the bond details. This is a 5-year bond maturing December 2020, with interest payments made on June 15th and December 15th, and a yearly principal payment made on December 15th. The sale is set for Thursday, February 25th at 10 a.m., and the preliminary official statement has been distributed by PMA. That was distributed on February 19th. And that went out to various industry resources, such as the Bond Buyer's Guide, as well as PMA's extensive listing and its posting on their website. Bob Lewis from PMA is here to answer any questions that the board may have regarding the ordinance and the upcoming sale. I would like to say it's been a pleasure working with Bob on this project, and I'm wondering if the board has any questions or if would like to hear from Bob.
I think we would. Why don't you give us an overview on the process generally, the specifics, and what we should expect coming up?
And what we would anticipate as an interest rate.
How much we save by keeping our AAA rating?
Yes. Well, and that's already done a very good summary of everything up to now. So on Thursday morning, bids will come in around 10 a.m. Anticipate you will receive several bids, somewhere probably between 5 to 8 bids. I would anticipate your issue would be very attractive, obviously because of AAA rating, but it's also a relatively short issue. We're only going out 5 years. And that makes it more attractive because a lot of investors want to be shorter on the curve right now. And that leads to more demand when you go to sell them. When we did the analysis, we had an estimated all-in true interest cost rate of a 1.76%. When this analysis was last run, rates were a little higher, so I hope that you'll come in lower than that at the time of sale. You have, as I mentioned, it's a relatively short issue. You only have 5 payments. If you recall, those payments have to fit into your what's called the debt service extension base. That it limits the annual levy you can have on your general obligation bonds. That amount is about $1.5 million per year. You have not used that extension base in a while, so the way that bonds are constructed is that you would go use half of that the next levy year 15, which would be the tax to collect this summer. So the first payment will be roughly $740,000, and the subsequent payments are a little less than that, about $600,000 per year, because we're planning on you issuing more bonds next year if you follow your plan of finance. So you make sure you leave room for those bonds in the structure. Once the bids are taken, the bid form will need to be signed by Ms. Curtis, and also I think we've set up for you the board president or vice president to sign it, because the ordinance you're adopting tonight sets forth delegates to approve the sale, subject to meeting the parameters that we just discussed. And those delegates we just have to be one elected official, one administrative official. Once that bid form is signed, that essentially functions as a contract between you and the underwriter. And then the attorneys will move everything towards a closing in approximately 3 weeks. So prepare a slew of documents which will feel like a mortgage closing, and those will be delivered to Ms. Curtis so that she can then set up a time for the board officers to sign these documents. Once those are signed, they're returned back to the bond attorneys, and then, I can't remember the exact closing date, and it was mid-March, the 17th. On the 17th of March, that's when you'll receive your proceeds, and then the underwriter will receive its interest in the bonds, which of course is transferred to a big book entry only process to your actual investors that buy the bonds. Any other questions?
Questions or comments from the board? Quick question. And this is consistent with the plan that we discussed through the grade print process and. Okay.
Yes, this is the first step of it, yes.
Yes, I do have one question. I think Cal, you might have asked, but what would the difference in your estimate of having less than AAA rating be on interest rate?
Yes, you did ask that. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. He asked.
Oh, you did ask that. On an issue, to be frank, on an issue this short, it probably wouldn't be that much, maybe 5-10 basis points, which isn't going to translate into a lot of dollars because there's not a lot of risk. The value of the AAA rating is more valuable the longer the bond issue. So I would say, the next series is planned to be, so I can't remember exactly how many years, but it's going to be out 10, 12 years. There you probably see a 10, 15 basis point benefit. And Highland Park name is.
Do me a favor, translate. Basis point means what?
0.1%. Or 0.1% is 10 basis points. 1 basis point is 0.01%. The Highland Park name is well known in this bond marketplace. You're in Lake County. Typically, bonds in Illinois carry a little bit of a penalty just because you're in Illinois and there's a stigma attached to it. But that stigma is reduced to some degree depending on the location. So your bonds are a little bit immunized just because they're short, or Highland Park, or AAA, or Lake County. You have a lot of things going for you. The only thing that's not going for you is Illinois. You're not a school district. You don't really rely upon the state for anything. So I anticipate your penalty on issue this short will be very small.
Great. Any other? What? So we're looking for a motion? Yes. Move for approval. Any debate? Okay, then call the roll.
Commissioner Bernstein?
Aye.
Commissioner Flores Weisskopf?
Aye.
Commissioner Kaplan?
Aye.
Vice President Ruttenberg?
Aye.
President Myers?
Aye. Ayes have it, motion carried. Ordinance is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Park Avenue update. Liza, anything to add to the conversation that we just had?
I do not.
Okay. So let's do the treasurer's report, next item.
As usual, the treasurer's report is included in your bond or the board packet. Because 2016 is the second year with a calendar year end, the prior year information, those last two columns on the right-hand side that we were kind of ignoring, are now in play because those are the prior year information, and both 2015 and 16 were calendar years. So both the month and the year to date are relevant as the information on the report is of January 2015. So last year we kind of weren't using those two columns because of the 9-month year as opposed to the 12-month year, and now we finally aligned. I'm very excited. I am very excited. I know nobody else here has even thought about it, but I'm very excited because that report is a very useful tool for staff because it provides a comparison of both the monthly, year-to-date, to budget, and to the prior year. So it is fully working as a tool for staff and management. So I'm very excited about that. This is the first month of the year. It's difficult to draw any strong conclusions to the overall operations. It's kind of in line with budget and definitely in line with last year. I would like to say, though, that there was no activity in the special rec fund, the debt service fund, and the capital fund to date.
Excellent,
Are there
thank
any
you.
questions?
Okay, thank you very much. New business, director's report.
Annette, before you leave, I just want to take this opportunity and recognize Annette and Connie from Annette's department is here tonight. I think this is the 26th year that the Park District of Highland Park is being awarded with the Government Finance Officers Association, just that's this one, Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, which is presented to the Park District of Highland Park for its comprehensive annual financial report for the 9 months ended December 31st, 2014. Our
one and only 9-month budget. So here for your. So I would just like to thank Annette and all of her staff because she's done a great job in really working on understanding the total financial picture of the Park District, and she has been great to work with. So.
And I think the board certainly echoes that sentiment. Why don't you step up this, you were this.
We will ask for a group photo with this one. I'll just continue on. Then old news, which is new news tonight because we actually have the plaque we received for Rosewood Beach for the Outstanding Facility and Parks Award presented by the Illinois Park and Recreation Association at its annual meeting at the state conference in January. So it's here. We're very pleased with that. And again, thank you all for your support with that. On to other business. Good news on the Park Foundation front. I reported at the last meeting that Liz and I have been working on this project and that we were dealing with the National Association of Park Foundations. So we had a meeting yesterday with Donald, their executive director, and we are now officially incorporated as the Park Foundation of Highland Park. Right. So procedurally, that's done. That was the easy thing, and we got the incorporation papers within an hour of filing. So Donald kind of assisted us with that. So the next bigger task is going to be establishing our 501c3 status with the Internal Revenue Service. So we, actually what Liz and I talked about with Donald yesterday was the opportunity to have Donald come to probably a workshop meeting in April and talk about the role of the foundation and how it relates and interacts with the role of the Park District and the Park Board. And that will give you all a better understanding of how the two organizations will work with each other, yet separate from each other, but supporting the mission of the Park District. So that was good news on that front. Then on to some event activity. Just a note on winter registration, certainly at Centennial. Always good to report when numbers are up, and in reviewing the director's report, you can see that in both gymnastics and ice for winter registrations are up. Ice is actually up 40 participants from 2015, and gymnastics is up 27. And then I think as you go through the report, you'll see that registration is doing well. The one thing that I want to comment on is the one area that was not at the same number as it was in 15 is our camp enrollment, but Liz and the marketing staff have come up with a new means for sort of target marketing camp registration. They've done a lot of analytics, and they actually know when the best times for people to register for programs are. So through their efforts, our camp numbers are now past 2015, and it's just great to have some good creativity on target marketing for a lot of not only camps but other programs as well. And then on the event front, we had actually, this is odd for me to say that Sunset Valley Golf is open, and we had 87 rounds last Saturday. Wow. There were actually about 13 golfers out today. Staying on the spring theme, the hard to believe, but Breakfast with the Bunny and the annual egg hunt takes place on March 19th. And then going backwards in time, we had the Nature Discovery Day at Heller on February 6th, and it was hardly a winter, it's an outdoor activity. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't very cooperative, but our staff had a great backup plan, and we ended up having about 300 participants there. And then this past Saturday night, we held the annual, back in our day, it was daddy-daughter date night, and that was what it was called, but now it's moved on to more exotic names. So it was the glass slipper ball. And again, our staff did an amazing job in creating the wow factor. And once again, some of our staff, along with Commissioner Flores-Weisskopf, served as Disney characters, and I believe you were Snow White.
I was not, Snow White was there.
Oh, we were not Snow White, sorry.
I cannot confirm or deny. I just
So-
know she was there.
But, you know, we got some really nice feedback from that event, and it's a great event for dads and their daughters. And we actually, I'm told we had more the dads were more active on the dance floor than they've been in the past. So it was a great night, and it is very nice being able to host that event at the country club. And with that being said, I have nothing further.
Excellent. Questions or comments from the board?
I think we should skip over some of the positive numbers. For example, at the rec center, I just saw what I had just body transformation registration, 214 versus 162 last year. And the numbers of so many of the programs, I just pulled that one out of the program registration numbers that we are experiencing are just amazing. And I think that is such a great compliment to the staff who have worked so hard to make these programs. Personal training up 23%. We can just go down a whole list. I'm just picking out reference, but throughout our programs. I think that's wonderful. That's a good question. For another day.
For another day. All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. We've already dealt with public comment, but just make sure, is there anybody left in the public who would like to address something that has not been covered? Let's see this, before we go into open meetings, I want to take a brief 5-minute recess and then we'll come back. So before we go to close. So let's take a 5-minute recess.
Yeah. Sounds off. Sounds off. The live feed's not yet. Who's coaching? 14. Feed's off. I won't be back on now. Like sounds off, but I can't do the live feed anymore. Feed it. I'll have to add it in. Where it says we're gonna edit it, I could. That's true. I need to go to council work.
Thank you. So I wanted to go back and revisit the one item from the consent agenda that was pulled, which was the dredging bid of $23,600. I want an opportunity to go back and take a look at it, and I spoke with staff about it. And I think under the circumstances that we're dealing with, recognizing that although there is some uncertainty, given the direction that things continue to be moving, and the park board's continued commitment to providing boating, even if it isn't us, I certainly hope it will continue to be, the dredging is something that needs to be done. We budgeted for it. It will provide access for both the sailors and the power boaters. And I think that we should continue to move the process forward optimistically. So I would like to get a motion to approve item C on the consent agenda, the Park Avenue dredging bid in the amount of $22,600. And we will also have a conversation with the city about that should the need arise. But I'm very comfortable being able to reach a good solution with the city on that number as well. So, okay, can we call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein?
Aye.
Commissioner Flores Weisskopf? Aye. Commissioner Kaplan? Aye. Vice President Rutherford? Aye. President Myers?
Aye. Ayes have it unanimously. Motion carries. The consent item number C, Park Avenue dredging bid in the amount of $23,600 is approved. That brings us to the end of business for the day. Could I get a motion to go into closed session pursuant to sections 2C1, 2C5, 2C6, 2C8, 2C11, 2C21, and 2C29 of the open meeting act? Could we call the roll, please?
Commissioner Bernstein? Aye. Commissioner Flores Weisskopf? Aye. Commissioner Kaplan? Aye. Vice President Rottenberg.
Aye.
President Myers.
Aye. Thanks, everyone. We're closed.